The loud hum of the SUV's engine faded into the distance as Adiola's children, Taiwo, Kehinde, and Tolu, scampered into Deborah's modest living room. Their colorful bags dropped to the floor in a heap, marking the start of another day of chaotic babysitting. Deborah stood in the doorway, her smile tight as she watched them play. She sighed deeply, wiping her hands on her faded apron before returning to the kitchen to stir the bubbling pot of stew. This wasn't new to her. Adiola, her longtime friend, had started dropping off her children a few months ago, initially for short errands or a quick meeting. It felt harmless at first, even a welcome distraction from her own childless home. Deborah loved the children. They were a joy to be around. But as the days turned into weeks, the occasional favor became an unspoken expectation. Adiola's life seemed perfect on the surface. Wealthy husband, sprawling home, endless opportunities. Deborah had been her friend since their school days, long before the wealth and status. Back then, they were inseparable. Now, their worlds couldn't be more different. As she set the table for lunch, Deborah's mind wandered. She thought about how Adiola never asked if the arrangement was convenient. She never offered any compensation, not even a small token of appreciation. Instead, every interaction seemed like an assumption that Deborah would always be available. It wasn't malice, it was indifference, a kind of blind confidence that her friend would always be there. Deborah's husband, Chike, had begun to notice her frustration. He worked long hours as a factory supervisor, barely earning enough to make ends meet. When he came home late one evening to find Deborah scrubbing crayon drawings off the wall, his patience snapped. "This isn't your responsibility," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "Adiola has enough money to hire an army of nannies. Why is this always falling on you?" Deborah didn't answer immediately. She couldn't explain it, even to herself. She had always seen their friendship as a bond that couldn't be broken, but now cracks were beginning to show. The next day, her younger sister Rachel paid a visit. Rachel was sharp and opinionated, with a knack for seeing through situations. She took one look at the state of Deborah's home, Adiola's children running wild, toys strewn everywhere, and shook her head. "Deborah, you're too soft," Rachel said bluntly. "Adiola is using you." "She's not using me," Deborah replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "She's just busy. You know how her life is." "Busy enjoying herself while you're here cleaning up after her kids," Rachel retorted. "Tell me, when was the last time she helped you? When your roof leaked, did she step in? When Chike lost his job, did she offer you anything? No. She takes and takes." Deborah felt the sting of those words, but she brushed them off. Adiola had her reasons, she told herself. But deep inside, the resentment began to grow, and soon it started to eat her whole. Her mind would drift off to the times when she needed Adiola's help more than anything, but her friend would just brush her off, saying she didn't have any money, only for her social media to be buzzing the next day from all the places she was going to enjoy herself. Deborah could not help it anymore. The resentment started slowly but surely, and now all she wanted was to teach Adiola a lesson and show her just how unfair she had been. One evening, after another exhausting day with Adiola's children, Rachel returned. She helped Deborah in cleaning up, and their conversation about Adiola continued. Deborah voiced out that she was sick and tired of being used without an ounce of gratitude, and Rachel had the perfect solution for her. She told her about a small vial of clear liquid that would do the trick. "A solution," Rachel said matter-of-factly, as she spoke about the vial. "You're too kind, Deborah. People like Adiola take advantage of people like you. This will teach her a lesson." Deborah recoiled. "Rachel, no. I'm not going to hurt anyone. It's not going to kill them," Rachel lied smoothly. "Just make them sick for a little while. I used it on my husband one time when I was sick and tired of his nonsense, and since then his head was correct. It is just enough to scare her, to make her realize she can't keep treating you like this." Deborah stared at the vial. She wanted to push it away, to throw it out. But she was now consumed by jealousy and resentment. It was too late to turn back. She was so clouded by the hate to forget that these were the same children she raised as her own and developed a bond with, the same children who enjoyed staying with her than they did their mother. The years of unspoken resentment, the feeling of being overlooked and undervalued, all came rushing to the surface. She hesitated, then agreed, and the next day Rachel arrived with the vial. A week later, Adiola called with a bigger request. "Deborah, I need you to watch the kids overnight," she said. "I have to travel for work, and my mother can't manage them." Overnight? Deborah wanted to refuse, but Adiola's tone was confident, almost demanding. She reluctantly agreed. That evening, the children arrived, cheerful and full of energy. Deborah prepared dinner as usual, but her mind was clouded with doubt. The vial sat on the counter, its presence an accusation she couldn't ignore. When the food was ready, she hesitated. The children's laughter echoed through the small kitchen, their innocent faces lighting up the room, but the bitterness in her heart drowned out their joy. With trembling hands, she poured the liquid into their soup. The next day, Adiola picked up her children, thanking Deborah as casually as ever. She didn't notice the strain on Deborah's face, the guilt that clung to her like a shadow. Later that day, disaster struck. Kehinde was the first to collapse, clutching his stomach in agony. Tolu began vomiting uncontrollably, and Taiwo struggled to breathe. Adiola's screams filled the house as she called for an ambulance, her heart racing with fear. At the hospital, doctors worked tirelessly to save the children. By morning, Kehinde and Tolu had stabilized, but Taiwo was in critical condition, teetering between life and death. When the doctors asked what the children had eaten, Adiola's mind raced. The only meal they'd had was at Deborah's house. The truth came out during the police investigation. Deborah, devastated after finding out that Taiwo could die from her resentment, that an innocent child would pay for a crime she did not commit, confessed everything, breaking down in tears as she tried to explain herself. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she sobbed. "I was angry. I was hurt." Adiola was devastated. "You were supposed to be my friend," she said, her voice trembling with pain and disbelief. "How could you do this to my children?" Deborah poured out her heart to Adiola. How all these years she had taken without a second glance, about how she watched her suffer while she lived a luxurious life, about how she never showed gratitude for all the time she was there for her, and Adiola's heart broke. Her children were in that condition because of her. The fallout for Adiola was swift. Chike, angry at the fact that his wife would do such thing to innocent children, packed his belongings and left. Deborah was left alone, her once simple life shattered by resentment and poor judgment. Taiwo eventually recovered, but the scars of that night lingered for everyone involved. Adiola, though deeply hurt, reflected on her own behavior. She realized that her selfishness had contributed to the situation. From then on, she made a conscious effort to be more compassionate and supportive of those around her. As for Deborah, she lived with the consequences of her actions, her life a cautionary tale of how unchecked bitterness could lead to destruction. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, then make sure to subscribe to the channel to avoid missing any videos.